So we are slowly nearing the end of 2025, and I have to say Tycoon has actually added a lot of things this year. Some of them were really negative, however some other ones were also extremely positive. So in this video guys, I will be going over 10 updates which I'd love the developers to actually add in 2026, because there's seriously a lot of content that they still have to cover in this game. So anyway, let's just jump right into it. So firstly, let's start nice and simple. The drones area is still useless until this day, and these drones really did not serve that much of a purpose in this game. Unfortunately, we only got the recon drone, machine gun drone, grenade drone, and the rocket drone, which are all not really serving a purpose in this meta. They're not very interesting anyway, and in general, they're just pretty bland. So I'd love to actually see proper drones being added in the game in the next year. Now, the next thing which I also see that's very requested is adding more bombers in the game, because we currently only have the B-29 Super Fortress and the B-2 Bomber, and to be honest with you, that is simply not enough, to be honest. And the next thing which a lot of people also really ask for is for a proper bombing camera, because right now, if we want to actually be able to bomb bases or whatever you're trying to do, we really gotta go extremely high if we don't want to end up getting hit. But the issue with that is once you're doing this, you cannot see your bombing sites, so you are essentially just guessing where the bombs are gonna be heading. So this is why I'd like to actually have a new camera system which basically covers the bottom of the plane where we can actually be able to drop the bombs from, because honestly, the way it is right now, it really does not feel sufficient for the current game standards which Tycoon has really been creating for themselves. Now, the next thing which I'd like to also see being added is actual modern big ships, because the only ships which you have in the game right now which could be considered modern is the USS Zumwalt and the USS Independence. I'm not even gonna count the Independence X. That thing is just simply slop to me. It doesn't make sense, but I'd like to actually see proper battleships being added, like perhaps the Yamato, or also seeing any general stealth ships which the modern military actually uses, because I know there are some which are kind of realistic which could definitely be added in the game, but right now the technology of ships is simply not very sufficient. I do like the fact that they added sonar, radar, depth charges, and more. They're definitely doing a lot better in terms of naval combat now. However, I do still feel like I'd like to have a little bit more added into it, and a lot of big ships which are not the USS Zumwalt and Independence will definitely help. Now, the next thing I'd like to talk about is going to be the overall base defense, because the only things that are stopping the enemy from actually raiding you right now is the shield generator and the serum. And I'm gonna be completely honest with you, the serum is outdated now. That thing might have been a little good maybe 2 to 3 years ago, but right now, for how the modern raiding simply works in this game, it's definitely not sufficient enough. And then with this, they will definitely have to add a new base layout, and which they are currently working on, because they are making a brand new part factory update which also removes the helicopter hangar. So they're definitely working on changing the base layout, and I'd like them to actually extend onto that in 2026. Now, the next thing which I'd like to also see reworked is going to be relating to the tanks, and I have been noticing this quite a lot recently, but why do planes have way better countermeasures than tanks in this game? For example, the flirts take around 8 to 10 seconds to regen, where with the smoke you have to literally wait 40 seconds. That is such a long time. However, another issue which I also have with this feature is how it literally creates a pluff of smoke inside of you, rather than actually firing it either behind you or in front of you, how it would work in real life. Another issue which I got is how the smoke is actually so small in this game. Like, you have the standard smoke grenade which is able to generate way more smoke. Just take a look at this right here. I would love the tanks to be able to generate much bigger and proper smoke just like here, because it actually makes the tank way harder to see. But also, if you are able to fire it in front of you as well, then what you could basically do is basically blind your opponent before the fight even starts, because this would just allow you to go into a fight with a tactical advantage, and that's another thing that would kind of add to this skill-based PvP in this game. You would be able to create a negative scenario for your opponent, and I believe that smoke would be perfect at doing that. The next thing which I'd like to also see added next year is vehicle transport helicopters, or just in general being able to use them to a much better extent. We have the Super Stallion in the game, which is just going to be a transport helicopter. However, I'd like to see something like the Chinook added in the game, which would be able to actually move the vehicles around as well, because being able to make a massive raid on a base with like a bunch of tanks which you're bringing in the Chinook will be so freaking cool, and I'd love to see that added in the game. But also just in general, the role-playing would become much more fun too. I believe role-playing is a very underrated feature in a lot of Roblox games, and in War Tycoon especially, it's not really done to a very high extent. I'd love to actually see a little bit more of that in this game. Now, another thing which I'd like to also see is once again another addition to the naval combat, and the addition of the aircraft carrier. This has been an update that has been talked about for years in this game now, and there's still absolutely no information about it ever coming to this game. I'd love to see some more information from Gizmotech about it, because I'm sure there's no way they can miss out such a great opportunity for a type of vehicle. Now, the next thing which I also do not like in this game, which I'd like to see changed in the future, is some remodeling to a bunch of vehicles. A perfect example of this is the F-35 Lightning. The one which the game currently uses is, I believe, the F-35B. However, the issue is it has so many inaccuracies compared to real life, and I'd like to see a lot more vehicles in general actually being remodeled, because I understand that the F-35 was added a very long time ago when the game only started modeling their planes, so they obviously weren't as skilled at that as what they are right now. So I would love to actually see a lot more vehicles being changed in general. Now, there is one thing which I missed about War Tycoon, and I know that Fortnite has done it way better. Give us an OG season, Gizmotech. This has been something that I have seen being suggested a lot more recently, just because people do feel the nostalgia of the golden and old War Tycoon, which is something that the current game simply cannot replicate. I could even make a dedicated video to this, but I believe the feeling that the game once had is no longer there, and I'd love to see a way to be able to kind of replicate that feeling, and giving us an OG season in the older maps would definitely be something great. You don't even have to move in the new Tycoon in there. You could just give us the older Tycoon with our older progress. I believe something like this wouldn't be too hard, and you could even keep it as a mode in this game as a whole. This game doesn't have modes at all, and that's another thing which I'd like to see in the future. Now, as we know, the hovercrafts have also been added recently, and they added 3 different types: the Overlord, the Reaper, and the Tempest. And other than this, there's not much more to it, because all of these hovercrafts are actually incredibly unrealistic. I'd love to actually see the Zobber class hovercraft and also see some type of transport hovercrafts added in the game, because the way that they are right now, it feels way too futuristic, and it's not something that the community has wanted. And now the last thing which I believe that's missing in this game right now is just weather events and map events in general. Right now we have the capture point, and that's really it. It's not very interactive. You're fighting for a point that gives you barely any cash anyway. You're basically doing it for challenges most of the time. I'd love to actually see more incentive to use the mid, or just add a lot more points around the map, which actually give us some kind of advantages, perhaps even being able to spawn our vehicles there, because right now there really isn't that many interesting things around the map, and weather could also add to this quite a lot. Anyway, for the time being, that's basically all I have for you guys in today's video. Do let me know in the comment section down below whatever updates you'd like to actually see in 2026. But anyway, thank you all so much for watching, and thank you so much to all my channel members.